Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to some EVE Online, and in today's video I want to share some of the thoughts I've been having when it comes to what should you do with your ISK in EVE Online. Now, what triggered the idea for this video is not anything that happened in EVE Online, but it's actually my playthrough of Fallout 4. So that may be a little bit strange. Fallout 4 is a single player game, but I finished the main quest with one of my characters, and there I was sitting with, I believe it was a level 51 character, and then I noticed that I had accumulated 13,000 caps on that character, which I basically never used. And that made me think about EVE Online, about virtual currencies, about game economies and all of that stuff. And so I wanted to make a video about that. But before I go into the actual discussion, I definitely want to know what you do with your ISK at the moment. What kind of a manager of your wallet in EVE Online are you? You know I'm definitely a hoarder. I'm the kind of guy that allows his wallet to become way too big. And that's actually a pretty bad thing to do as well. But I would really like to know what you do with your ISK in EVE Online, or what you do with currencies in the game. I can imagine that some of you may be big gamblers. You know, you do read from time to time about people that gamble billions and trillions of ISK on websites like EveBet. That's something that feels pretty damn crazy to me, but there's definitely people like that out there. Or are you one of those big spenders, you know, one of those guys that always has to beg your corp mates for another loan because he can't replace his Drake after he lost it because his wallet's always empty? There's people like that out there as well, and I would definitely love to know what you do when it comes to like in-game currencies and stuff like that. But for me, I've been playing EVE Online for 6 years now, and at one time, you know, that is what those 13,000 caps reminded me of. At one time I had accumulated 20 billion ISK in my wallet on my main character, and honestly, looking back, I felt pretty good about that, right? I accumulated 20 billion ISK. Look how rich I am, look how much EVE Online I've played. It felt pretty good. But if I take a step back, it's actually a really stupid thing to do, delonewolf. You made 20 billion ISK and there it sat in your wallet, which is actually the worst thing you can do. And this shows me that I need to remind myself from time to time some of the rules that I've learned in EVE Online but have yet to really put into practice. So this video is maybe a little bit of self-therapy as well. I never really articulated my thoughts on all of this. And I constantly need to convince myself not to keep hoarding more and more stuff. But why is 20 billion ISK, why is more ISK in your wallet such a bad idea? Well, first of all, a first rule that I think I should try and follow more is that I should not be afraid of having an empty wallet. I should not be afraid of spending the money that I have when I know I want to buy something. Because an empty wallet is actually the best wallet. It's a way better wallet than 20 billion ISK. And that may sound a little bit weird, but looking back at it now, if you have an empty wallet, and you have a goal in EVE Online, something you want to work towards, that's going to be a great incentive to actually play the game, enjoy the game, work towards that goal, try and find the best and optimal way to actually reach that goal. It's all part of the experience in EVE Online. And so an empty wallet, I think, is great for your motivation in the game. And I should definitely be less afraid of that, because that's obviously what it is. I feel a sense of security of having all of that money sitting in the wallet, and it's such a bad idea. It's actually much better to have an empty wallet, and that's definitely something that I should remind myself of more and more. The biggest reason why I think it's such a bad idea to keep a lot of ISK in your wallet is because in virtual current economies, like in games, when you think about it, inflation is the name of the game. It is absolutely inevitable that an in-game currency is going to inflate. The reason is that ISK is being created out of thin air just by playing the game, and if there's one thing that the game is only going to accumulate more and more and more of, it's time played, and thus ISK created in the game as well. It's inevitable that we'll have inflation, monetary inflation, I think it's called, in general in any economy, and that of course means that having a lot of that currency is just the worst thing you can do. And a first option, you know, the immediate alternative, you could say, is of course there's this big market, this big vibrant market in EVE Online. It's probably a lot better to not keep the ISK in your wallet, but to actually buy stuff on a market, you know, to have goods out there that will not inflate as quickly as ISK. And if we take like some battle cruisers, for instance, let's take some Galente battle cruisers. You can see an example of this. This is a 1 year chart of the Brutix, and obviously it goes from 48 million to 54 million. Here's the Myrmidon going from 54 to 58. Here's the Talos going from 72 million to 78 million. You know, this could be considered just a monetary inflation that happens in the game, and part of protecting yourself could definitely be to invest in goods. But thinking about all of that, there's actually two problems that I see with it. The first one is CCP. You never know what CCP is going to do, and of course they could end up nerfing the goods that you've decided to basically try and store your value in. For instance, here is the Brutix Navy issue. That would not have been a good choice, because we started at 200 million and now it's only worth 180 million. And here's the Drake Navy issue, for instance, starting at 230 and ending up at 190 million. And another thing that I don't really like about just the general goods inside the game is that those are subject to inflation as well. While these are created out of thin air, just like ISK, you know, basically ships, weapons, ammo, anything is just minerals and other goods that are created by the time of players. The time spent of players, and thus they are also subject to inflation. Of course, they have a slightly better ISK sync than the ISK has. ISK has just those set ISK syncs that people know about and can avoid as much as possible. When it comes to the syncs for the goods in the game, it is of course quite a bit better, because people tend to want to blow each other up in EVE Online. So the destruction in the sandbox is of course what I think makes buying goods not too bad an idea. Definitely better than keeping ISK in your wallet, which silly me did to the tune of 20 billion. But it is, I don't think, the best option either. If I would have to give you guys the best option, it's also what I'm doing now as much as possible. It is of course Plex. Any extra ISK that I don't feel like I'll need in the short term, I put into a Plex as soon as I can. I've been playing the game for 6 years, and when I first started playing the game, I think Plex were trading in the 300 million to 400 million range. That's a third or a fourth of the current price. And so I think in Plex it's really where the inflation inside the game shows up the most. And I think, this is my opinion of course, but I think that Plex are the best store for your value for the time that you've spent in the game. Now, some of you may say about this, well, that's only logical. Plex are bought with real life money, and so they are obviously the best store for value. But I disagree with that. I don't think it's because Plex are bought with real life money that they are the best store of money. What I actually think that is special about Plex is that it has the best syncs. Plex have really valuable uses that are often used by players. Plex represents 30-day game time. People obviously want that, so in that sense Plex represents the currency that it's being paid for. Plex is also something that's used for skins, for vanity items, and so in that sense Plex, I think, are used up a lot, which makes it the best synced item in the game. And I think that that's what makes it special, and that's why all the inflation is actually going to show up in Plex, and why Plex is actually going to remain valuable, because 13 days played in the game, that remains the same regardless how long the game has been going through. But a million ISK, of course, at the very beginning of the game was something completely different than now, more than 10 years later. And so yeah, this is honestly, in a nutshell, what do I think you should do with Plex, with ISK in EVE Online. You should put it into Plex, and in fact I would expand this to any other MMO out there if they have an item that is tradable on the market, but that is actually purchased with real life money and that has its uses, you know, in like stores and things like that, that is probably always going to be the item that you want as a store for value. And especially, you know, I was talking about the inflation of currency, but also the inflation of goods in EVE Online. Keep this in mind in other games, the inflation of goods where nothing is actually lost, people just accumulate more and more and more, is like a major problem as well. And pretty much the only store of value there could be an item like Plex, which I think by now most MMOs out there do include in their game as well. But yeah, Plex I don't think is necessarily unique because it is bought with real money, but I actually think it's unique because it is used so much. It is such a useful item that actually represents 30 days playtime inside the game. And yeah, that's what I did. I spent most of my ISK just buying up Plex. I did manage to do that, but not before, I think, learning a pretty costly mistake that was hoarding up to 20 billion ISK. Because looking back at it, if instead of accumulating all of that ISK, I would have just bought the Plexes as I could afford them throughout my 6 years of playing, I would have been way better off by now. Yeah, that was obviously a mistake that I made and tend to still make, seeing how I actually played Fallout 4. So hopefully this video will help keep me on the straight and narrow. Don't be afraid to spend that wallet. An empty wallet is not a bad thing. The ISK that you have is actually only going to be inflated away by the efforts of other players. It's something that I constantly do have to remind myself, I think. And all of this, I really think that this is pretty damn fascinating, you know, online economies, game economies, playing EVE Online. It's such a major part of that. I do sometimes wonder what's the end game in a scenario like this, right? I see this as pretty much endless inflation of ISK in the game. Where does such a scenario lead to? I think that that's really fascinating, seeing EVE Online as this really big economic experiment, basically, where goods and ISK are being created. They're just endlessly inflating. What is that going to end up like? Is it really going to be just a constant increase in price? Part of me says that can't happen either. How will all of that play out? I think it's pretty damn fascinating, fun to watch, and it's definitely a part of why I make stuff like EVE Talk and things like that as well. So yeah, there you go, guys. Thank you very much for listening to my rambling about in-game currencies, virtual economies and stuff like that. And I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.